Mando, welcome to the show. It is really great to have you on.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you having me.
Cool. So you are a CFP. For those that don't know what a CFP is, can you describe what it is and the tests and exams you went through to get that designation?
CFP stands for Certified Financial Planner, and it's seen in the financial advising industry as like the gold standard of certifications. So when to get your CFP, there's a couple things. Number one, you have to have 3 years of qualified experience in the industry. The second thing you have to do, you have to have prerequisite courses. So for myself, I took 7 courses. They're all online, and you pass those courses, then you move on to the next step where you take a comprehensive exam on all of those. So I think they go through financial planning fundamentals. There's behavioral finance, estate planning, investment planning, income tax planning, retirement planning, all of these things. Insurance is one I'm leaving out. You go through all of these, take a comprehensive exam, and then you have to pass the exam to then get your CFP. And one more thing I left out, you have to have a bachelor's degree as well to become a CFP. So you do all that, then they give you the 3 letters behind your name.
So where were you working to get the three qualified years of experience?
Yeah, so I started my career as a financial advisor with Mass Mutual, very big insurance company. They also have a big wealth management side of things as well. But started with them, been with them for 3 years.
Awesome. And how did you get interested in it?
It's funny, man. I never planned to do this. My whole life, my whole life, I thought I was going to be a doctor. My dad's a family doctor. I looked up to him my whole life, and I'm like, man, people respect him. They really are receptive to him, and I wanted that, right? So I'm going through school. Science came easy to me. School came easy to me. I'm thinking this is a perfect path. I go to med school, get out, I learn from him, I take over his practice. It was a home run. Like I'm stupid I didn't do it. Just, like kidding. But anyways, I'm in college and I'm in my second semester and I realized it wasn't my passion. So my dad did the best thing for me though. He was really supportive, set me up on networking calls with different professionals to just learn about other careers. And the second call I made was his advisor. Since I had that conversation, I knew I wanted to do this. And I interned with him in college. We went through college. And then as soon as I graduated, I came right into the industry with him and learned from him, have met great people along the way. And here I am today with a thriving business.
Interesting. So what can you describe a little bit your like relationship with money growing up and what was it about your dad's friend
Mm.
his advising business that got you so sparked and interested in that?
So I grew up really well. I mean, my dad being a family physician always made great money and I grew up well, man. Like I'm lucky. I hit the parent lottery, so to speak. But money was never talked about. And as
Mhm.
I get older, I sort of see how much, not get older, but as I get into my career, I sort of see how much my family really didn't take initiative with money. Like they're very well off and everything is fine. But granted, it's on the back of my dad's salary that is
Mhm.
substantial, as you can imagine. So one of the big things has been helping them with my expertise. But I look at money and I'm like, we didn't talk about how much my dad made. I didn't know how much money my dad made until he became a client of mine. I didn't know how much money my parents had in accounts until they became a client of mine, which I don't think parents necessarily talk about that, but a general understanding to teach principles to your kids, I think, is important. So growing up, it really wasn't talked about. And when I talked to my parents' advisor, Timmy, what drew me to the career was a story he told me from a client where a husband passes away. He goes over to help the wife and make sure she has income and she's okay. And the wife pulls him in the other room away from the family and everyone there that's grieving. And she said to him, there's 3 things we all think about before we go to bed. The first thing we think about, did I hurt anyone today? And if you did, you could pray about it. If you're religious, you could talk to a friend, whatever you need to do to make amends in your mind. The second thing we think about is our health. Am I healthy? Is my family healthy? Am I making good decisions with my health? If you need to fix any of that, you call your doctor. And that's my dad. My dad is that person for people. The third thing we think about right before we go to bed, just before our eyes shut, am I doing the right things with my money? Can I pay my bills? Am I putting the right amount of money away? And when he positioned it that way to me as being the third person people think about before they go to bed, that's who I wanted to be. And I realized I could help people just as much doing this, if not more, than my dad does as a doctor for people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess once you started managing your parents' money, I mean, you don't have to give super specifics, but what general things were they, in your estimation, doing incorrectly that were maybe quick fixes?
Yeah. The biggest thing, man, honestly, is just having a budget. They had a very loose budget, but when you make money and you're not tracking things, and it's funny, I find this with the more money people make, the easier it is to let leaks come out. So there was a lot of money that was just being spent out of, hey, it's here, like, and we could spend it, and we're already putting money in other places. But what I really worked on with my parents, for example, is just optimizing things to make sure you have this amount going to this account and this money's going over here, and we're protecting with proper insurances and not overpaying for them at the same time. Things like that, that they're all little things in the grand scheme, but when you put them together, they're huge.
Interesting. So on your Twitter, and I think this was the thing that kind of caught my eye. Your tagline is helping Gen Z manage money and build wealth. So why did you want to target Gen Z specifically? And have you noticed anything about this demographic group that might be different from others that you've worked with?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So first and foremost, I'm Gen Z, so I relate to Gen Z. I'm going through the same challenges. So I thought, you know what, man, that's a good opportunity. Second, I'm in an old man's game. I don't know what the average age of financial advisors are, but I would bet money it's at least 55 years old, at least. I'm 25, man. So I'm a young guy in an old man's game. What can I do to move that to my advantage? And there's a really good book. It's called Blue Ocean Strategy.
Oh, I've heard.
And yeah, so great book. I'm rereading it right now. But it goes through like finding your blue ocean, where the red ocean is where all the sharks go because all the blood's there and they get their food. But the blue ocean is where nobody is, so there's opportunity there. I saw Gen Z as a blue ocean for me because most advisors won't work with them. They don't have the most assets. The people with the most assets are the people that are 60 years old, that are 70 years old, that are going into retirement and worked 40 years to build them up. So I shifted my business model completely. The tradition in financial advising is a 1% of assets as a fee. I looked at, how do I pay for everything? Subscription, Amazon, YouTube TV, whatever it is, subscription model. So I started charging a subscription based model to my clients with no asset minimums. And a lot of people in this Gen Z, or even into like young millennials, have worked with me because sure, they don't have a ton of assets, but they have a ton of cash flow. They might be saving a few $1,000s a month, and they still need financial advice, and they still value financial advice. So I sort of shifted towards that, especially with my marketing. And as I've been doing this for about 1 year, marketing myself that way, it's been awesome. The people that have started working with me, and it's really cool because the traditions of financial advising, that investments are the only way you impact people, it couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. There's so much beyond that, and I've seen it firsthand with my clients.
That's pretty cool to hear and encouraging that the younger generation is taking control of their finances. What types of things do they come to you with? Like, what are their main concerns? Like, what's maybe keeping them up at night?
I think the first one by far is like, how do I buy a house? And what
Okay.
do I even need to worry about? What do I need to do? Like, how do I know I'm ready? What house can I afford? So unpacking that, a lot of things fall into there. You talk about overall just balance sheet, like understanding how much should be in my savings, how much needs to be going into my retirement accounts, what types of retirement accounts should I be investing in? Okay, now I know where my cash flow is going, how much can I afford? So we back into that problem. But then when you get to your balance sheet, it's how much should be in savings, because you can't buy a house and just wipe your savings out. You need to still have a good cushion. I'm finding this out now, Jack. I bought this house 3 months ago that I'm in. We get in the house. Originally, we thought we needed a roof. 3 years later, 5 years later, that's what the inspector had told us. Had to put a roof in the first month. Thank God I have an emergency fund to pay for that roof, and I didn't just spend everything to buy the house. So, just an example, but it's a lot of financial fundamentals like that, and unique problems spawn out from there. But how much to be putting in retirement accounts, how to position yourself to get ready for a house, and where your money should be going every time you get paid. Those are the three biggies.
Where do I want to go with that? I echo your sentiments on the house. That there was a three houses that I bought from this one couple going through a divorce. This was now um almost 6 years ago. And almost immediately I had to put a new roof on because I couldn't
Yeah.
find an insurance company that would insure this one property. And I ended up, because this was seller finance, I ended up calling the former owners, asking them, where'd you get insurance? And they're like, well, we didn't have insurance. And like, it didn't even cross my mind that you could have a rental and not get insurance on it. So that was like a quick
Yeah.
4 grand. But I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are like 4 grand. That's like nothing now. But yeah, it felt, but it was a good deal anyway. But okay, so in terms of retirement accounts, investment vehicles, what would you say is maybe the most underestimated or underutilized investment vehicle out there?
The most underutilized, in my opinion, is a simple taxable brokerage account. And for anyone listening, a taxable brokerage account is simply an account where you already paid tax on your money. You go invest in this account and you buy stocks or you buy mutual funds or index funds, whatever your investments are. If your money gains, you'll pay capital gains on whatever that is, but you get your original money back because you already paid tax on it. So very underutilized for a few reasons. Number one, there's no sexy tax benefits to it. When you put money into a traditional IRA or a 401k, you get a tax deduction. So it's good to contribute because you could lower your taxable income. On the other hand, with a Roth IRA and with a Roth 401k, after tax money goes into those, and that grows tax free, assuming you wait until 59 and a half to take that money out. So people really like those. And if you go on like personal finance forums or social media black holes, like that's the stuff you'll see people talk about because of tax benefits. But with the taxable brokerage account, I think it's really important because you can invest in it, but the money is liquid. Granted, in a Roth IRA, you can take out your contributions, but in a taxable account, everything is liquid. All you need to do is sell. There might be tax implications on selling, but the money's available. And I really, really like that because you don't know what's going to happen. I had a big chunk of change in a taxable account this time last year, Jack. I sold a good chunk of that to buy this property. It's a 3 unit house. We live in the first floor. We rent out the other two. There's a garage in the back that we rent out. This was an investment opportunity that I could shift those dollars into this to now have cash flow and more income on a monthly basis. So if I had that money in a retirement account like a 401k, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Sure, you could loan against 401ks, but it just gets messy. I'd rather the flexibility. So I think it's very underutilized. There's more reasons that are a little more in depth that I could get into, but for our purposes, I'll just stick to that for now.
No, I definitely appreciate that answer. And I think I had a recent guest that mentioned the same thing. I actually had taken a couple loans against my former 401ks, and I basically went to take another loan, and then there were all these IRS stipulations. So then I
Yeah.
just surrendered it all so I could buy. I just surrendered it to go buy more real estate. But I definitely see the advantages now of just putting it into a taxable brokerage account. So if someone were to come to you and say, okay, well, I do get a 401k match at work. I mean, like percentage wise, like kind of how does that look? Like I'm guessing you would recommend go up to the match. Would you recommend going over the match into a 401k or just hit the match and then everything else in the taxable brokerage account?
It depends on a couple things. I'm gonna recommend most of the time go up to your match, get your match. Depends on what the match is. I've seen some pretty bad plans where it's like, hey, contribute 6% and we'll give you one. Like, why
Mhm.
even throw it out there? But for the most part, you're gonna want to take advantage of your match. The way to think about it, it isn't free money. That's what people say. Your employer is baking that match into your compensation they're paying you. If they pay you $80,000 a year, they would have paid you a little bit more if they weren't giving a 401k match and offering that benefit. So just remember that and make sure you're taking advantage of your full compensation. But beyond that, the only time I'm going to tell people put more money in the 401k is if they're like, you could have a high earner that is making a ton of money there's and they have 10 grand a month that's just left over. Well, if you're someone like that, probably makes sense to be maxing your 401k out. Maybe even makes sense to be putting money into your Roth 401k too, just get as much in there. The one thing about 401ks that I do really like, it is the path to least resistance to investing. It is the easiest possible way to invest. It comes out of your paycheck. You never even know it's gone, and you're getting investment dollars. But on the other hand, if you're someone that's going to need liquidity, you have a lot going on in your life, even if you're a high earner, let's say you're a real estate guy and you want to get properties and get into that space. And I have some clients like this that they make a lot of money, but that's really their goal. Hey, I want to build a portfolio of real estate. Cool, let's do it. Still get your match at your 401k. Now we have extra money. Let's start getting this extra money elsewhere so you could go and take advantage of using that later. So whether that money goes in a savings account or a taxable brokerage account, another strategy to cap this off, if you build up 100K or more in a taxable account, you now get access to what's called a securities backed line of credit. So, similar to a home equity line of credit on a home when you have equity, you can actually borrow against stocks that you own. So if you have 100K, typically the ratios, they'll let you borrow up to like half of it loan to value. So you can borrow against it. You get a better preferred interest rate. I think right now the worst rates are like 4.6. And for perspective, mortgage rates are around 7% right now. So it's a pretty cheap line of credit relatively. And you never have to sell your stocks. There are stipulations that you have to hold certain classes of stocks. Like you can't hold like emerging markets ETFs and borrow against it. But it's another way to get access to capital without forfeiting dollars and still put them to use in another vehicle somewhere.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that line of credit through the stocks. That's pretty cool. Now, when I guess in the brokerage accounts, are you mostly doing ETFs, or is that how do you typically go about allocation?
It depends on the client, honestly. Some people, some of my clients that work with me, because as I mentioned, I go off a subscription-based model. I don't require that I manage clients' assets nor get a fee on them to collect
Mhm.
to do active management. So some people want active management, and there are benefits to that on the other side, regardless of what financial Twitter says. But some clients are like index funds, set it and forget it, and they're cool. Other clients want to get complicated. They want individual stocks or they want to get into ETFs as well and trading in and out of those and getting an active portfolio. So what actually gets invested? I wish I give you a better answer, but it's very dependent client to client.
Okay. Do you get a sense from the Gen Zers that they like Bitcoin a lot, or do they talk about it much?
People do. You would be surprised though, like more of them aren't in tune with it as I thought. when
Interesting.
I when I first got into financial advising in 2020, it was one that's when like Bitcoin was really starting to go on that huge run it had up to almost 70,000. So I'm like, I remember it was like 35, 40K, and I'm like, I need to learn about this. Like I'm a financial advisor. People are gonna ask me about this all the time. So I went down the rabbit hole for like a year. and like just learn. So to my surprise though, a lot of people really don't ask about it, which is interesting to me. I mean, now the price has come down a lot, so that might be a factor in it. But yeah, man.
Interesting. Well, as we're closing out, I like to ask guests, what's the best piece of personal finance advice you've either received or heard, and then the worst piece of advice?
The best piece of advice is going to be very simple. Take all of your expenses, whatever they are, and then the money that's left over, save half of that, spend half of that. If you do that in general, you're going to be in a really good spot financially. Now, obviously, details come into play of where that goes and whatnot, but in general, you'll put yourself in a pretty responsible spot if you do that, assuming you don't have a car or house that you can't afford. Worst piece of advice that I see, um, there's a lot of angles I could take with this, and a lot of people have different opinions on this. One thing is like investing in real estate in a self-directed IRA, I think is like useless. You might as well just buy REITs because people tout this. And I don't know if you do or other people, but I think that in a self-directed IRA or in an IRA, you might as well just buy REITs if you want real estate exposure because you lose all of the tax benefits today that buying real estate is so good for outside of that. And in addition, you can't use that property for personal use at all in a self-directed IRA. The next part, you can't use the cash flow today. It all has to go back into the self-directed IRA and it has to pay for any expenses on the property. So that's been getting a lot of traction. Like I've seen reels about it and a lot of stuff on LinkedIn about it. I just don't think it's necessarily good. And then with debt, I mean, people will talk bad about all debt. This is probably the worst advice, that no debt is the only way to go. You should use debt for good debt. If it's under 5-6%, that's good leverage. You can make a return on that and use it effectively if you are. But over that, no. So
Okay, cool. Good. Wise wisdom there. So, Mando, why don't you let the listeners know where they can go learn more about you and maybe, use your services?
I'm most active on LinkedIn and Twitter. I just got on Twitter about a month ago. I've been very active on LinkedIn for about a year. You can also find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, Mando Sallavanti the third. Search it anywhere. My big nose will come up sooner or later.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's been great.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks.